Hello, this is Greg Smalley on Pod 366, a weird movies podcast. Joined today, as I often am, by the indefatigable Giles Edwards.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Giles.
Okay.
And we have a ton of movies to talk about this week, mostly physical media releases. Nothing really out in theaters, one kind of on VOD, not a lot of news and rumors, although we do have one. So we're going to jump right into it. And the first thing, let me bring up the stills. And what's the first thing you see there, Giles?
Why, I see a gentleman with a noble swoop of hair on his head. Looks like he's in his late 60s or 70s. One of those types that buttons his collared shirt all the way up to the top button without having a tie there. And he's looking at the camera with a slightly bored, slightly quizzical expression. He's a very famous Midwesterner, and we've written a lot about him.
Named.
David Lynch.
All right. So this is what we have on David Lynch. One little teaser that a lot of you probably know about. I'm going to see if this is going to play as it should. Giles, tell me if you can hear this. I'm going to try to turn my microphone so it's right up against the speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, something is coming along for you to see and hear. And it will be coming along on June 5.
And that is it. That's all we know, all we have. Giles, could you see that recording?
I could, yes.
And you could hear it just fine.
Oh yeah.
All
June
right.
5. Wow, why that's 4 days away from this being posted.
And yeah, and that's absolutely all we know. No one has given any sort of leak about what it might be. I know we've talked about a couple of David Lynch projects that didn't get traction. I don't think it could be either of those, either the animated Snoot World one or the what we think was Wisteria one, because I don't think there's been enough time
Ah,
when we were talking about that and now. So I don't know what it could be. I'm not going to even hazard a guess.
yeah, that's probably the sensible thing to do. Unpredictable fellow, Mr. Lynch. So yeah, I wouldn't hazard a guess either.
So let me see. Next week we may talk about it when we know more. But let's move on to things we do know a little bit about. Do you want to describe this poster we're looking at briefly there, John?
Sure, we're looking at like a nice classic style poster with a pencil drawing version of a otherwise photograph looking portrait of a woman's face and hair flowing, kind of disheveled hair, tear coming from her eye, and her eyes being particularly remarkable in this case, being entirely a nice cadmium style red. And this tearful face is looming above a full moon, in front of which is a very institution-looking building, from around a century or more ago. And in sort of jagged paintbrush style red lettering is the title. And that title is House of Screaming Glass.
Okay, so this is some low budget, surreal looking horror that is out on like one VOD platform. It's very limited. It's Fandango at Home, which is actually a subdivision of Vudu. VUDU is where you can find that. And we don't know much about it. There is a trailer available. What I got from it is it's about a woman who inherits a spooky house from her grandmother, and inside she finds some evidence of witchcraft, like some books and one of those wax hands, and she starts hallucinating. The few reviews I saw of it were not particularly favorable, complaining about a very slow pace. Giles, did you see the trailer or have any thoughts or know anything else about this project
Well,
whatsoever?
I can't really say I know anything, but I did watch the trailer and it looked certainly at least as intriguing as the many good enough horror films that seem to come out any given week. I was intrigued by brief flashes of what it looked like. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a claymation-y monster thing, but definitely had a very tactile feel to it. The body horror hints all looked rather promising. And it's the kind of thing that if this turns out to be under 90 minutes, I may well volunteer to review it.
You'll have to go through Fandango at home.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that may thwart me.
yeah, you can. It's just voodoo. It's a
Uh, uh,
simple app download. But yeah, maybe it will expand to some other uh, venues. I believe that this actually came out last week rather than this week, and I forgot to put it on last week's list. But
hmm.
um, not much known about it. Obviously, very low budget. Looks like one actress and some very simple special effects. Um,
Yeah.
House of Screaming Glass is the name. Who knows?
Uh-huh.
Maybe good, maybe not. But here, now we're coming up on a string of 3 releases that were all canonically weird releases, getting, in some cases, as a matter of fact, in this case, its first real North American release. I have chosen a still for this, Giles.
You certainly have chosen a still.
Do the best you can with this.
All right. Well, I know it isn't, but from the setup of the walls and the massive sliding metal door, I'm getting a vibe of a very large elevator here, but it's definitely more of a, I don't know, a stylized, candy-colored, perhaps insane asylum room. There's padding along the walls that is a sort of pastel maroon color. There is that big steel door, as I mentioned. There are a couple figures walking away from what looks like a little hot tub thing. And one of those figures has what I'm guessing is a pair of flashlight antennae, probably maybe a repairman or some other sinister purpose, perhaps. And inside the little hot tub that these two figures are walking away from, it looks treading, it seems, on a sand-covered floor. There's a group of 5 fellas hanging out in a kind of hunched bunny pose. 3 of them dressed in, I'm going to say, Roman gladiator style armor, and the other 2 possibly wearing nothing. Hard to tell from the bubbles.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Um, I honestly, I don't remember this scene in the movie. I think that our heroes are being betrayed once again by 2 aliens who continuously betray them uh, in this film. They are sort of genuflecting as they are forced to do because of class considerations.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
This, of
uh-huh.
course, is from the Russian movie Kin-Dza-Dza. I assume I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, close enough
They
for
are
government.
made up words anyway, so I don't know how they're pronounced in the film. It's spelled Kin-Dza-Dza in English transliteration. As I say, it's from Death Crocodile, never before been released in the United States on physical media. I saw it when it briefly was on Amazon Prime. When they were just really starting up, they had a bunch of Mosfilm, really old, rare Mosfilm films that were part of their catalog
Yeah.
briefly.
Yeah, I can believe. I remember there was like a 6-month period where it seemed like they were just buying anything and
Yeah.
everything and showing it for free for Prime subscribers.
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. Those were the glory days. They had it was pretty much what Tubi is kind of like now, except it's like they really had almost everything.
And no commercials.
And no
It was,
commercials.
yeah.
And that's where I first saw it, but it has not been released on DVD. Giles, do you know anything about Kin-Dza-Dza?
Nothing outside of your review for it, which I hope I'm remembering it correctly. We have apocryphized this, right?
No, it's actually on the official list.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, so
Canonically,
it was that long ago. Wow, time flies. So yes, other than yes, that intersection of late Soviet and contemporary science fiction, you're always going to get something interesting.
yeah. So I think the way I described it in the original review from, let me just check out what this from 2018. Seems like just yesterday. It was
Gosh.
5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Hmm.
This absurdist science fiction satire was deliberately odd from its inception. Today, since the vanished Soviet Union is almost as strange a world as the desert planet Pluck, Kin-Dza-Dza has become a movie about one alien culture lost inside another. I also see, because this is a Soviet movie that did not have a lot of money. It was, they're variously budgeted by the state. And
Yeah.
even though this is Glasnost era, it's not really, it's not, it's a very pro-Soviet movie, because when the Soviets uh, protagonists go to other planets, they find that the other planets have bizarre caste systems, class
Hmm.
systems that don't make any sense to them at all. But what they did, instead of having a lot of special effects, was play around with language to the point where the aliens have, I think, about 8 words in their vocabulary, and every other word in the language is coup.
Hmm.
So they say coup a lot.
Yeah, it's like
Everything.
our and like. Looking at this director's output, apparently in 2013 he did an animated sequel to this.
There
So,
was a sequel. I did not see it. I
yeah.
didn't know that the director was involved with
Ah,
it either.
that's,
At any rate, I will
well,
say,
excuse me, not sequel. It's an animated remake, it says. So, still probably worth peeking at if it can be found. But
let's see how Deaf Crocodile describes it. Imagine Andrei Tarkovsky directing
mm,
Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and you'll come close to the existential weirdness of this wonderfully loopy sci-fi era comedy. And that's pretty good. That's a pretty good description. Tarkovsky directing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, although it is much faster paced than Tarkovsky.
so yeah, so maybe Douglas Adams writing Solaris.
Perhaps. And it was a flop when it was released in theaters, but later became a hit on Soviet television. As I said, it was released in 1986, so it's the Glasnost era, but it does sort of feel ideologically like an earlier movie, because it very much celebrates the Soviet system. Everybody in Moscow is so friendly and convivial to each other, and the alien planets are just very cutthroat, every man for himself. As I said,
Mm.
absurd class systems. Um, this We got a lot of bonus features here, a new restoration, an hour-long interview with one of the surviving actors. We got a commentary track by Walter Chow, another interview with a film historian, some written essays, a video essay, and so a lot of stuff here. Really good. A lot of people haven't seen this and should. Probably one of the lesser seen canonically weird movies on our list of 366. So if you want to take a chance on it, it is not on VOD. You're going to have to buy it from Deaf Crocodile. I don't know if they will eventually put their stuff up on VOD. Maybe they're planning to at some point, but they have not so far. So you'll have to spring for the Blu-ray. Um, I say it's worth it, but who knows? But speaking of canonically weird movies that have been
Ah,
released, this one is on UHD. Giles, a quick description of what we see on this cover here. If you...
all right. An interior shot, very crowded. We do see a window to a bleak nighttime area in the background. There's a cross over that window. Sort of flanking the two characters in the center are a bunch of assembled upright skeletal figurines in various states of completion. And this is sort of could be a romance novel cover, if I may. There's a strapping, sinewy, tousle-haired, manly man looking a bit more confused than most of those in romance novels look, in the direction of the sort of submissively posed, perhaps unconscious, long-haired woman who seems to be emerging from a cloud of vapor that emerges from just behind the title on this, I'm guessing, Blu-ray cover.
Ultra HD, it says.
Disc, physical media cover.
And it is
It is Cemetery Man.
Yeah, they're like making love in the ossuary.
Yeah,
It's something they
as you do.
um now, Giles, have you seen this one?
I've seen it a few times. Yes, Cemetery Man, Della Morte, Della More, if you want the Italian original title of Death and of Love. And it is a movie I have tremendous amount of respect for. And obviously, it has a place in the offbeat horror world. I regarded it primarily as a comedy, but that may have been because of my own macabre leanings. But yes, I don't think I've seen Rupert Everett in anything nearly so worthwhile. And the whole thing is just delightfully silly, absurd, and dark at the same time.
Right. Well, it starts out kind of as a twist on zombie lore, right? With Rupert Everett is a caretaker in a graveyard where the dead keep rising from their graves, and his job is to like shoot them and put them back in their graves, only to rise again, I guess. And he has a sort of mute-ish, chunky assistant. And then that's a strange enough premise, but then it just starts getting weirder and weirder and weirder from there.
With a wonderful, the wonderful showdown at the end, or well, not the big long tension bit is masterfully executed too.
Yeah, a romance between the caretaker's assistant and I think, underage talking head.
Yes, yep. And
and then
the mayor
death shows up, and yes, very much worthwhile. This has been out on Blu-ray before, now on 4K UHD, and I believe they have brought over most of the original extras that were on the Blu-ray and have added a new interview with director Michele Soavi and an interview with actor Rupert Everett, who I haven't seen around a lot lately.
He's one of those British types. I know he has done a whole lot of stage work, so that's kept him busy. And I've seen him on and off in odd television appearances. So he is obviously a talented fellow who is kept busy, but not intersecting with much of the American viewership.
And this is from 1994, so believe it or not, that was 30 years ago. So I'm surprised. We're lucky that they're still alive to do interviews. People, movie, believe it or not. It seems kind of fresh to me. I didn't see it to the 2000s, so maybe it seems fresher to me for that reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Cemetery Man. That probably gets a high recommendation. Probably anybody who likes weird movies is going to enjoy this one. It's got all the weirdness and surrealism, and also a lot of grounding in the genre tropes, which it subverts. Moving on to our third one. Another difficult one to describe, Josh. Just do your best.
This is a splatter shot of all kinds of images. Most of them are people or people-esque in various activities along the periphery. I guess I'll focus on the center here with a completely white, lithe woman animated. This is for an animated feature. Luscious red hair and artfully placed bits of I'm gonna say vibrant plants, maybe covering areas not typically seen on at least the covers of media. And she is in the sort of support and embrace of a nebulous, dingy brown looking figure in a kind of checked cloak, who I imagine has, archetypally mystic implications for that particular entity, considering what I know this to be. So this is very busy on the eyes, lots of watercoloring, but sort of harsh watercoloring, I guess I might describe it, with really, kaleidoscopic, but just barely maintaining form here. So there's a lot going on in this cover, which makes sense considering the movie it's for.
Which is?
Belladonna of Sadness.
All right. Now, so have you seen Belladonna of Sadness, Jeff?
I am almost ashamed to admit I have not yet, and rereading the 366 review just before here, I asked myself again why I haven't seen it yet.
Well, it was pretty rare. It was from 1973 and rediscovered and put out by an outfit called Cinelicious, which is now Arbalos, and apparently they've lost the rights to it. But I believe it was rediscovered in about 2016, and they put it out. It is a very limited animation, very beautiful. There are scenes that are just like the camera panning across a like Japanese scroll, and you see more things as the camera pans, but it's all still. There are parts that are lightly animated, and there are parts that are more elaborately animated. And the story is basically, it's set in France, medieval France, even though it was made by Japanese filmmakers. And it's about a peasant woman who is raped by a nobleman and goes to Satan to get some witchy powers to get her revenge. Really a feminist statement there, but it's very psychedelic in its telling. And I do have to say, the animated rape scene, although it's not graphic, it's abstract, it is very visceral and chilling and potentially traumatizing to anyone who has been a victim of sexual violence. Or is sensitive to that. It's going to come with a what the kids call a trigger warning, Giles. But it's very artistic, not exploitative in that sense, but very intense. And I am disappointed that this is being put out by an outfit called Discotheque, who normally does sort of more populist anime entertainment and is not known for their art house work or for putting out, elaborate discs with lots of extras like you would see in Criterion. The old Cinelicious Blu-ray for me would be the preferred method of seeing this. But if you have to have it on Ultra HD, this is it. And I do believe they say it's been restored some more.
Yeah. Yeah, the little blurb on Amazon suggests that at least some further effort was put into sharpening the lines further. I'm kind of curious myself because it says it's 2 discs, and I'm just wondering if there's a backup. Is that the backup Blu-ray?
Yeah, I think that's just
Oh, okay, so that's what that. Okay, so yeah, it looks like there isn't anything beyond the movie, which is,
we don't
enviable.
think. If there is, then they're not advertising it, which would be strange, but it's possible. Um, but that is Belladonna of Sadness, another certified canonically weird movie for you. And that does the 3 canonically weird movies, again being released on physical media. Kin-Dza-Dza for the first time, Cemetery Man, and Belladonna of Sadness, both in 4K upgrades. And now we're into other movies that are being released. This one I've chosen a different sort of background. Giles, uh, instead of a front cover of the Blu-ray, I've chosen the back of the Blu-ray. Would you want to quickly describe what you see?
Yeah, these are, shall we say, nature photo quality stills of what, from a mid distance or further back, would suggest a documentary of wildlife in some manner. There's an image of an ape-like figure seated with perhaps a badger there on a log, looking in the middle distance, with definitely an appearance of contemplation there, and that sort of dominates and has a little blurb from the Guardian newspaper and some remarks about the plot of this documentary seeming item. And then there's a triple shot of 3 photos of 2 different ape-looking creatures, and those more intimate portraits of face and bust, sculpture bust area, flank a let's see, maybe I'd go so far as to say a melancholy observation of a trio of these entities looking over a vista.
All right, and you know what it is.
I do.
Back cover.
This is the back cover of Sasquatch Sunset.
Yeah, the Zellner brothers movie that chose to put Riley Keough, is that how we pronounce it, Giles?
Kyo.
Keough, and
Kyo.
oh gosh, who's the other?
Jesse Eisenberg.
Jesse Eisenberg in unrecognizable Sasquatch makeup for this movie that plays out kind of like a nature documentary that you might see on National Geographic, sort of about Sasquatches, but it just follows these Sasquatches around. No dialogue, meaningful English dialogue, some grunts, which may have significance to the Sasquatches, and uh, bits of comedy, including a lot of bodily fluids, a lot of bodily fluids, a lot of bodily fluids.
I was pleased that you leapt for the opportunity to review this, because I need a very high quality film to justify the amount of bodily fluids that I suspect you saw on the big screen, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I may be exaggerating. There are just a couple of scenes that are rather memorable. It's also, though, despite that, and there are definite comedy scenes, like when the Sasquatches sort of incongruously try to use a turtle as a telephone, seeing as how they wouldn't know what a telephone is. But
Maybe they saw some strangers in the area from a distance, with a similar
possible.
hard shell device.
It's possible they're just aping what they saw. But yes, and but it's also very touching to believe it or not. We do a little bit of a spoiler. It starts out with 4 Sasquatches and ends up with less Sasquatches than that. The composition of the Sasquatch tribe continues to change throughout about the year that this covers in their lives. From the Zellner brothers, very strange idea backed by Ari Aster again, and so happy that they got this into theaters. Now they have it out on Blu-ray. I believe it is also on VOD at the
Yep.
moment. Let me verify that.
Oh yeah, it is on VOD. I'm looking at
Yeah.
certainly Prime.
Yeah. It's not
Uh,
the bargain pricing yet. The pricing will probably go down. I see $6 for a rental or $15 for a purchase. Blu-ray currently at just under $19. You can also get it on DVD for you want to save a couple bucks. They do also on this have a bonus short film, which was the first sort of Sasquatch movie called a Sasquatch Birth Journal that the
oh,
Elner brothers did kind of before they did this feature. Showed it at Sundance Film Festival way back in 2011.
uh-huh. Yeah.
So they've been thinking about doing a Sasquatch movie for quite a while.
Well, I'm glad they got to live their dream and glad that you had such good things to say about it.
Oh yeah, it's a very fun movie, very worthwhile. Probably ends up on the top 10 weirdest of 2024 list based on the premise alone. But we shall see. Maybe a lot of weird stuff's going to come down the pike and bump it down the list. Moving on, I have a still here for one I'm pretty sure neither of us have seen. Giles, would
You
you
are
like to
correct.
describe?
This is a beautiful nighttime panorama with a lovingly hand-painted mountain backdrop, semi-obscuring a delightful full moon peeking up just over the left-hand side of this widescreen. In the foreground, we have some playfully painted, watercolored maybe, cactal structures obscuring in part the three traditionally animated looking horseback figures that are moving from left to right as we observe them on looking tired on their tired steeds, which makes sense considering this is very obviously the nighttime. And we have a guy that looks like he might be an ex-convict considering the striped nature of his baggy shirt. There's a more upright sitting fellow in the center with those frilly chap things and, looking all around genuine, if clean-cut cowboy. And leading the group is a brunette with a delightful black cap, wearing perhaps some southwestern tribal warming adornments. Getting a poncho vibe from what she has keeping her warm on this southwestern desert night.
Yeah, and the name of this
Yeah, it's got a
film?
name. The name is Quantum Cowboys.
Right, right. Let me see if I can bring this up. Yes, and so this is how would you describe it, Josh? Did you see the trailer? I
I
did.
did see the trailer, and as mentioned in text on screen in the trailer, 12 different animation styles, which throughout they seem to illustrate that, yes, there were indeed 7 or 8 that I personally observed in the minute and a half or so. And the log line here, this is described as two hapless drifters, Frank and Bruno, team up with Linda to discover her land and trek 1870s southern Arizona to find an elusive frontier musician. The complex quantum time theory is blended with philosophical musings about art as the way we understand our history and memories, with gunfights, horses, dance halls, cacti, and saloons. So almost sounds to me like a potentially entertaining version of This Waking Life.
Yeah, I think somebody has compared it to This Waking Life. A lot of what I've read about it are people complaining that it was too confusing, but I think there's some notable things about this besides the animation, which looks pretty good and is varied, a lot of rotoscoping and that type of thing. But it has in it recent Oscar nominee Lily Gladstone, which
Hmm?
may be why it gets re-released now because it was made, if I'm not incorrect, a while back, maybe
Let me
you have that information, Giles?
Okay, I'm looking at a date here that says 2022 per IMDb. Let me see if there's any quick blurb about anything beyond that. So I guess it's at least a couple years old, and yeah, I can only presume that the actress getting her fame has helped. Like, oh, hey, let's make an effort to distribute this.
Furthermore, Lily Gladstone, this is before her big breakout in a Martin Scorsese movie. It's got some more people in it. Keoa Gordon, who I'm not familiar with, but apparently is fairly popular. David Arquette, who of course is a member of the Arquettes acting family. A guy named Frank Mosley, who sounds kind of familiar.
And looked kind of familiar in the
Because there was a Frank Mosley we interviewed who wasn't
my
that
goodness, they're indeed.
for
It
Love
does.
and Work. There was a guy named Frank Mosley, and he also shows up in this. Gary Farmer, big name from Dead Man, the Indian nobody. Alex Cox.
Hey, we know of him.
And a number of musicians. It was co-written by musician Howie Gelb and Nico Case, the great country or more alt country chanteuse shows in there. John Doe, who's more of a punky sort of country guy. It says Anna Karina. I'm not sure if it's really Anna Karina. I don't know if she's even alive.
No, she's credited on IMDb.
It's an sort of insane cast for it not to have been gotten more notice upon release. So there's a lot here to recommend. We have a guy from Film Thread who generally gives good reviews to everything. So take it with a grain of salt. Does call it the new king of the psychedelic Western.
What? Yeah, did he point out who the old king was? Because I mean, I'd love there to be a lot of competition for that, but I don't think there's much.
I'd say Greaser's Palace has.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, it's called Quantum Cowboys. It's got some Western, some animation, and some quantum philosophizing in it as they go between different levels of reality, plus a lot of familiar faces. So that's one that just kind of snuck up, showed up on VOD and Blu-ray just this week out of nowhere. We were lucky to catch it, and it looks like something that should be checked out. Giles, I'm going to say, unless you have any real quick closing comments about this, I'm going to say we take a brief break and come back.
Sounds like a good idea, Greg.
We got 3 more titles of much less importance than what we've done so far to discuss, but we will discuss them before signing off for good. So it will be seamless for you. Giles and I are going to take a break and be back instantaneously. All right. Hello, we are back, and of course, absolutely nothing has changed. As you can see, it's just the way it was before. Everything is just fine. There are no tentacles rising around Giles. Oh, we do have a guest, special guest.
That should help our membership numbers, I'm sure.
Yes.
Everyone on the internet loves little cats.
People love cats. I don't. I'm allergic to cats. That's I do love dogs. Who I'm not allergic to most of them. Actually, my cat allergy was really bad when I was a kid, but it may have sort of subsided a bit. The last few times I was around them, I didn't have terrible symptoms, but I'm still leery of the little buggers.
Oh, well, fortunately I'm not, because they're a very convenient pet.
They are.
With winters existing as they do in my area, I'm happy not to have to get up at 6 in the morning and go outside.
Yeah, good point. All right, back to movies, the movies we haven't covered yet. So we're going to start off right now. Giles, what do you see on this 4K Ultra HD cover before you?
I see a I see a pinup photograph of a dashing young greaser with a single tear coming from his eye, looking at the camera lens with an expression that would just make anyone melt. And in the foreground of this snapshot, there is a young woman in pastel lilac, lying on her back with her legs extended straight up in the air, with a smile on her face as she looks also at the camera as she lies with the top of her body resting in front of the photograph in question.
And the fellow in the picture who is actually, although you might call him a greaser, he's actually technically a drape.
A drape. Okay. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I read through our site review and saw some terminology that really brought me back.
I think that's Baltimore specific lingo, and
Okay.
like
Yeah, I believe it.
I don't know if the woman is Tracy Lords. I'm not sure it is. It might be though on the cover, or she might be just some extra. At any rate, the
Well,
picture
she's supposed to be, could be any woman, girl that age,
that is, yeah, I
going for
guess
this drape.
that is, and the drape in question is Johnny Depp. The movie in question is John Waters' Crybaby, which we will mention, although I have called it, publicly called it the least weird John Waters film in existence.
Which probably puts it somewhere above Weird Wise, the strangest, say, Michael Bay movie in existence.
Yeah, much. Yeah. It's still very odd for uh, normal people. Giles, have you seen Crybaby?
I have not.
Ah, it's one of his John Waters brief when he went into that PG/PG-13 period in the late 80s, early 90s, and kind of went Hollywood a little bit before going back to his more transgressive style. Um, and this is kind of the height of that. I don't think it did well at theaters. Now it has some following. It's basically a parody of 1950s juvenile delinquent movies. There's a couple of musical production numbers. Johnny Depp is the heartthrob who has the ability to cry one tear on demand and melt young girls' hearts. Young girls and poodles, not young girls, but I mean teenage girls.
Yeah, co-generationals, and they're
Yeah,
all.
it's all age appropriate.
I do see Mr. Waters brought with him a number of less likely performers to flesh out the roles, though.
Yeah, it's a great cast. You go over the cast if you.
Sure, just looking at the IMDb thing here. Of course, we've got Johnny Depp and Amy Locane, but there's Ricky Lake in here. There's Iggy Pop, Kim McGuire. They brought in Joe D'Alessandro for a square comedy. Why not? Joey Heatherton, Patricia Hearst, Mink Stoll. So, a nice formerly, as it was 1990, so a lot of rebellious types of decades prior.
Here's a couple you missed. Susan
Oh,
Tyrrell is in it.
okay,
Troy Donahue is in it.
Yes.
I think that there is a small role for one Willem Dafoe.
Okay, yes, I remember now reading that. So yes, there's as you say, a good cast for this bit of not too weird for Waters fluff.
Yeah, I think in this period that was one of the things Waters was doing was he was assembling some crazy casts. You'd have Debbie Harry, who hadn't acted much in Hairspray and some other things, and Ricky Lake, who it was Ricky Lake, and he wanted Tracy Lords because she, had been subject to a scandal, not because she was a great actress.
Mhm.
Addie Hearst for the same reason, who was not an actress at all. So he had a lot of fun with his casting in this era. And it is notable, it's one of Johnny Depp's after getting off 21 Jump Street, or maybe he was still on it. This was kind of his announcement. He was going to go into films and he was not going to jump straight into Hollywood, or he's going to jump into at least a little more offbeat fare.
Yeah.
If you're starting out your movie career working with John Waters, it probably is indicative of aspirations towards the unusual to come. And it
Yeah.
certainly followed for young Johnny Depp, who really did a string of weird movies in the 90s, from Dead Man all the way to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and others.
Yeah. Yeah. So uh, I
So
do like it when young heartthrobs go for the unconventional career.
yeah. So that's Crybaby for John Waters completists, probably. Next up, Giles, I did not want to use the actual Blu-ray cover of this because I thought YouTube might actually flag it for nudity.
Yeah, it isn't
So
tasteful though it is not safe for work.
it's not.
It's not tasteful.
It's instead I used this still. So explain what this still is of, if you will.
I will do my best. All right. So we're looking at a gaunt figure in possibly stylized or perhaps just accurate early 19th century dress. I'm going to guess this guy is in Italy, and I'm saying that not only because I know who I'm looking at, but also there are these Roman columns just dominating the background there, and he is striding vaguely toward the camera with a dour look on his face, with some passers-by, incidentally female in this case, but that gender shows up a lot and to a great extent throughout this picture, which I have not yet had the pleasure of seeing, but I recently reread our site's review for it and saw the trailer, and must say I am amazed at the promise of early 70s excess to be found in this late 80s feature.
Yeah, well, see, if you thought Ken Russell's biographies of composers were kind of offbeat and out of whack, maybe this one, which is Paganini,
Mm.
show you their further depths to be plumbed still. Probably not as surreal as Ken uh, Ken Russell's work.
Yeah, I'm guessing there's a much more raw feeling to what is going on in Kinski's adaptation of the late section of that performer's life.
Right. So it's Paganini by Klaus Kinski. And so a couple of interesting trivia points about this. It was, from what I can tell, the last movie Klaus Kinski ever acted in, and it was the only movie he ever directed. He's
Yeah.
credited with co-directing one, but this is his only solo feature. So this is how the great Klaus Kinski chose to end his career in a movie that's a biopic of Paganini, but only, I think, maybe in the loosest sense. Giles, I thought I would read what essentially is Alfred Eker's plot summary for this movie,
Oh, I think you should, Greg.
um, which he wrote for the film back before it had even been really released. There was just, I think he saw a bootleg type release, or it was overseas release way back in 2013. And he describes the plot thusly: Paganini plays his violin with searing intensity. Women masturbate to him. Paganini plays. Horses have sex. Paganini plays. Crowds throng to him. Paganini plays. Upper class society types deem him the devil. Paganini plays. Women succumb to orgasmic heights. Paganini plays. Paganini has uninhibited sex in carriages. Paganini plays. Underage girls dance. Paganini walks through the streets alone, silent, internally determined. Paganini dotes on his son. Paganini plays. Paganini has uninhibited sex in a field of flowers. Paganini plays. Paganini has uninhibited sex on an actual bed. Paganini dotes on his son. Paganini has more uninhibited sex. Paganini composes. Paganini plays. Paganini has even more sex. Paganini helps aspiring young musicians. Clerics deem Paganini a rapist of underage girls. Paganini gives to the poor. The ill Paganini comes increasingly to depend on his son. Paganini gets sick and dies. The end. So perhaps not he describes it as a montage of those scenes and the sex scenes as nearly pornographic. This is exactly what I would imagine Klaus Kinski would want his last movie to be with him.
Sometimes Mother Nature steps in when you've hit that high watermark or whatever kind of watermark this might be called, and says, all right, now this is set in stone.
Since we can't see it, Giles, would you like to describe the cover that we
yes, the artistic cover here. Yes, for the actual Blu-ray, which in the day before PG-13 existed, could probably slip through as a PG image, but prudes will be prudes. We've got on the very sort of an underlay background, musical notation. There's some sort of score here, no doubt played by Paganini between the various uninhibited actions of his. And the two figures in the foreground we see, I'm going to describe as a very flattering but largely realistic oil painting style portrait of Kinski as Paganini, all done up formally and holding his violinist's bow and resting on his arm, not an instrument, but a young brunette woman whom we see from the back. We see most of her body from top of the head down to upper thigh. And the bow is artfully resting up against her right buttock that is on full display here. So you may now know why we did not put the actual product on display, but it is available in, I think, a 2K.
Correct, yeah.
Which is probably about as good as they could realistically claim to improve it. It's from Vinegar Syndrome, so you know that whatever efforts could be made were in bringing both the full cut and it looks like a theatrical cut and the English language director's cut. So and a bunch of extras. So
oh yeah, ton of extras, including a press conference from Cannes that Alfred hinted in his review was something special with.
Well, yeah, and I believe him and certainly trust him. But even without any information other than Kinski and Cannes press briefing, I want to see that.
Yeah. And then a lot of interviews, a number of interviews with whoever survived, some producers, a manager, sound man, survivors, an actress. He's got an audio interview of an actress. So a lot of extras on this Vinegar.
Oh yeah, the 52 minutes of behind the scenes footage, that's probably got some interesting treasures tucked away in there to see Kinski as director doing whatever that means.
Yeah, that would be, it's a curiosity for sure. I'm not sure how weird a movie it is beyond just the whole idea of Klaus Kinski making a nearly pornographic biopic of Paganini.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, two other things I know about this worth mentioning. Herzog declined to film this for Kinski. He apparently was begged by the actor to help him bring this to life. And Paganini's son is played by Kinski's son, who the internet told me was the only person in attendance at Klaus Kinski's funeral.
Yeah, yeah. Klaus, not too popular with just about anybody. I imagine Herzog was just fed up with him at that time and didn't.
They had when did Cobra Verde come out? Because that I think was their last collaboration. But they from my recollection of the Herzog thing that I saw recently. Yeah, okay. So he had worked with Kinski as recently as '87 and decided that was it.
Yeah, they came to blows, or at least almost.
Yeah,
I think they
there
actually
was
probably got.
guns drawn at times, film stock burnt. Oh yeah.
Uh, and Klaus Kinski was famously, uh, though in demand, he was beyond difficult as an actor and a personality, as the fact that only his son attended his funeral might lead you to believe. He was not terribly popular with just about anyone because of his angry, narcissistic ways.
Yeah. Although there was one defense put for him by Herzog's first wife. There was all that you've just said, but he had always memorized his lines.
No, he was a great actor, and he made like Aguirre, the Wrath of God. I mean,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
other actor. I mean, I'm sure another actor could have done it, but you only think of him in that role. He was absolute perfection in a masterpiece. He was Nosferatu. He did all this great work
Mhm.
with Herzog, but he was, as I said, beyond difficult. You hear people talk about difficult actors. The legends about Herzog are just beyond that. I mean, just throwing punches at people. I mean, insulting everyone, just so unpleasant. Um, but he directed one film, and that was it. And our last item, something that just kind of popped up, and
Yeah.
I have virtually nothing to say about it. I've seen a small trailer, but Giles described at least the cover, if you will.
All right, I will do my best. This is a primarily a heavily doctored photo still that features the face of a prominently toothed gentleman, and it's stacked. It's as if it's a stack of about one, two, three, four images, kind of zooming toward the viewer while getting smaller, I guess. The head figure overlaid in smaller and smaller frames. So we see a larger outline of the head and hair, then a smaller and smaller until we finally see the entire person in question. That is a very striking image, but one I know I have never seen before.
Sort of a shaggy haired guy with really bad teeth. And
Uh,
it is from Bleeding Skull, who specialize in direct to VHS or direct to DVD features, resurrected from years past. And it's called The Other Dimension and the Films of Fabio Salerno. So as far as I can gather, it is a group of direct-to-video features, but Italian ones that have never been seen in the United States from a DIY horror filmmaker in Italy. And we have a trailer, which you can see on the site, but I thought I had it up. I was going to read some of the specific reasons, there were some specific quotes that explained why we thought this might be interesting. One reviewer of the few reviewers who've seen it, probably a advanced copy, called it dreamlike. Another calls it art house horror, DIY art house horror for adventurous horror heads. I think that's the publicity. And then there's another quote which says it's the missing link between Dario Argento and the
oh
Cooper
yeah.
Brothers movies.
Yeah. And yeah, so I looked this guy up, not having ever heard the name before, on IMDb, and the only information they have that he was a director and producer known for, a couple of the titles, and he died in 1993 in Milan by suicide. And that is all they have to say about him, which, obviously it's only IMDb, but that is still pretty bare bones for them. So this looks, yeah, very outsider.
Yep. very rare, very much a shot in the dark, I would say. We do have the trailer, which does show some pretty creative work for a guy who's working with no budget. There's a scene with a little creature popping out of a wall. Did you see the trailer,
No,
John?
I didn't. I guess since I saw that it was a box set thing, that there might not be one, but I am very intrigued. And yeah, cross-referencing the product page and the guy's filmography, this looks like you buy this and you have everything Fabio Salerno ever made.
Yes, they are all short films except for one feature, which is an anthology feature, so it's a collection of short films.
Hmm.
And that's a shot in the dark for the adventurous. If you see it, tell us what you thought. So it's The Other Dimension and the Films of Fabio Salerno. And that was our last item of so many today. Giles, do you have any closing comments?
No, nothing in particular. Yeah, it looks like a good week for physical media though, because that was pretty much everything we saw was piqued my interest to one degree or another. So that's yeah, someone looking to drop a couple $100, you can get everything that we've talked about.
You can get three canonically weird movies in
Mhm.
Kin-Dza-Dza, Cemetery Man, and what am I forgetting?
Belladonna of
Belladonna
Sadness.
of Sadness, right. And that was it for this week. So many movies. Next week, we will have on, or at least we have scheduled on, the filmmakers behind a little movie called Hanky Panky about a sentient telepathic handkerchief that fights a sentient telepathic hat. And those are director Nick Roth, director-writer Nick Roth, co-director Lindsay Hahn, and both of them were also acted in the movies, in the movie. So we will have them on to discuss that. I saw it last night, and actually, I have to say I would recommend it to anybody looking for a little very absurd horror comedy that's beyond modestly budgeted. I mean, they did this almost for free, and they're not making any excuses for it. They're very proud of having done this for nothing on a lark, and more power to them. So we'll talk to.
Yeah. The director, I briefly chatted with him, arranging the interview, and he said he was honored to be in the basement with the Mighty Boosh.
So we're happy to have them on next week, and we will see you then. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.